Good afternoon. Glad to see so many stuck around. We didn't lose folks to horse and buggy rides in Central Park or overpriced suits at the Hugo Boss store downstairs. So we promised you every element of the local news today. So this afternoon we're going to get to sports and we're going to get to weather. So don't worry about that. The next session, though, I'm super excited about because I get to call on a client to moderate a session. It's interesting how we develop our client ecosystem, our portfolio of technologies. Many come in and pitch us. We're introduced via connections and referrals. And sometimes when I get a chance to engage with a CDO or a CMO or a director of digital marketing, I hear about amazing technology in the market and we seek them out. So I got to be honest, I was crushing hard on Custora for a while before they came into our portfolio. If you're into predictive personalization, this is the panel you want to be part of. You want to engage with. Custora really helps retailers understand what their customers need and when they need it. The messaging that you should be providing them helps you keep the customer for longer, helps you engage the customer at that critical moment. Also, the power of predictive personalization. If you like alliteration, this is a great panel for you. So with that, Brett Robbins is the head of business development at Custora. He'll come up and introduce the rest of the panel. Brett, take it away.
You start by coming up. I didn't know I was introducing everyone too.
That's formal.
I would say that if I knew I was going to be the center of your pitch, by the way, for the client program, I would have asked for a discount or something like that. So welcome, everyone. I have the pleasure of leading the panel right after lunch, which means all of you guys are tired and probably still checking emails. So I'm going to be very exciting. Yeah, please take your seats, guys.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to let you guys introduce yourselves as opposed to me doing it because I think you'll do a much better job. But I'm really excited because we have a very diverse panel here. We've got people in the e-commerce space. We've got people in the media and omni-channel retail space. And then, of course, we have AccuWeather, which is unique in both publisher and data platform and consumer resource and all sorts of things. So with that, Rosemary, do you want to actually kick us off, give a really quick hello to everyone?
Sure, great. I'm actually a quantitative sociologist by training, which means I'm a data and analytics geek, but I'm very passionate about human behavior. And I work at AccuWeather. We are the world's largest provider of weather forecasts and warnings. We reach over 1.5 billion people worldwide through AccuWeather.com, award-winning apps, the AccuWeather cable network, through radio, whole other host of platforms. And really, I lead our analytics initiatives where we uncover actionable insights into the minds of consumers, into our customers' businesses, really providing that next level of intelligence that impacts people every minute, every day around the globe. And it's those insights that really help drive business decisions for AccuWeather, also for our customers, and ensuring that advertisers on our platforms really get the highest ROI possible.
Awesome. And Annemarie, I don't think anyone doesn't know what HSN is, but maybe you can help them understand better how you guys are
Annemarie
changing.
Frank, VP, Omni-Channel Marketing. It's all the customer-facing marketing across all of our touch points. HSN, otherwise known as Home Shopping Network. We've been around for 40 years. Is our anniversary next year. Multi-channel retailer, more than $2 billion in sales annually. So I'm responsible for all the customer facing, and we leverage data in all of our marketing. So happy to talk a little bit more about that with all of you.
Yeah.
I'm Jed Kleckner. Thanks for having me. Brett and I were talking a little bit beforehand. We have traditionally, Delivery.com has traditionally been an e-commerce marketplace. We build our technology as a platform, so we also expose everything that we have published to the marketplace to third parties, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into it. But in terms of data, obviously we're collecting a tremendous amount of information, transactional information about what people buy, when they buy it. So we're starting certainly to do more around recommendation and personalization, as well as starting to partner actually with brands who are starting to realize that for off-premise transactions that are obviously, that's 100% of our business, you can get in front of a customer. Certainly millennial has been the focus, but that'll obviously change with time. You can get right in front of them at a point of purchase, either for conquesting them away from another brand's product or matching it to something that's relevant to what they're in the path of purchase to buy. So certainly a lot to talk about there.
Thanks. So before we get into the specifics here and these guys' perspectives, and I think it's going to be really interesting, you guys are going to have very different perspectives, so we'll see what happens in round 1 and round 2. But we should talk about how do we actually get to personalization. So what's actually happening in the world of retail, in the world of brands, and the world of data. And so what we see today, being a data analytics solution, is that most companies today are really stuck. The way that decisions are made within the company tend to be focused on channels, they tend to be focused on products, they tend to be focused on everything that is not the customer. And it's interesting because you'll have really, really smart people talking about the importance of putting the customer at the center of everything they do. And you'll have people within these organizations trying to evangelize and think about ways to be more customer-centric and actually be more personalized. But the challenge is that technology and process and a lot of the structures that actually move the organization today really aren't built around the customer. And so you have this shift in customer-centric thinking, not necessarily a shift in process and technology. And so where I wanted to start with today's conversation is to hear from each of you about how are you putting the customer at the center of what you do? What small steps are you taking? Big leaps are you taking? What ways are you actually starting to apply data today that is truly customer-centric in nature?
I can start. You can
Great.
Jump in. But, I think the bar has been raised, as expectations among the customer, go up and up over the years and over time. So we realized at HSN a few years ago that we really had to get our house in order with all of the data, underlying data, because it was all fragmented in kind of stovepipe systems. Just the nature of lots of companies, right? And especially in our company, we're very much product-led company from our heritage perspective, because you put something on TV, which was our kind of original channel of how we sold to customers, and you sell through that unit and you bring on the next one. So just inherently, we have a lot of product-centric type systems and processes at the company. And so there was a recognition that we needed to change that, and it started with the data and then a lot of the systems that sit on top of that data. So we invested significantly over the years. But, and I was talking to Brett in preparation for this, the technology is almost the easier part. And it's the business processes and change management and the corporate org structure and decision-making process and even measurement and reporting of what does success look like. And I always like to talk about it at our company. It's like a Rubik's Cube, because you still need the very product-centric silo kind of verticals. They're a really important role in terms of building the right assortments, the pricing calibration, and all the traditional stuff that we do that's very product oriented. But now you've got like the Rubik's Cube coming in this way, trying to really make sure that there's that alignment from a marketing perspective and a customer centricity perspective. And all of the goals and all of the KPIs and metrics and reporting just for day in and day out of meeting every Monday, looking back at the week, how'd we do? And it's not just product orientation reporting, but you have other metrics of success, so you can balance things. So I think it's been a journey. We've got a lot of the technology in place. We're still working on some of it, but I think it has to evolve from a cultural and business process perspective.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really interesting, because a lot of times when we think about personalization, we think about what the customer actually sees at the end of the day. And it's, did we put the right product, the right experience, the right shoe, whatever it is, in front of that individual? And in reality, personalization really does need to start at the core of the organization and how they think about the customer, how they measure these experiences, because it's not just what the customer sees, it's the whole process that actually to get there.
Absolutely.
And so, Rosemary, I'm going to jump over to you in a minute. I love this this idea of the Rubik's Cube, by the way. It dovetails very nicely with the presentation on geeks earlier. So thinking about and I'm pick on you a little bit, Rosemary, so the geeky perspective as we apply and actually think about how do we leverage data. It'd be really interesting to hear about some of the things that you guys are doing to apply true data, predictive data techniques to the way that you're looking at the information and what that means for the business.
Sure. So we always have to think of, the customer, like you said. So we have to think about our customers. Who are they? How does weather impact them? And we do have a lot of weather geeks, weather nerds at the company who just are really interested in weather. But at the end of the day, we know that weather impacts all of these different areas of people's lives. from what you wear to what you eat, what you buy. It can save lives, or it can just determine little things like if you're going to straighten your hair or leave it curly. So it's really taking all of these insights and harnessing it collaboratively. So we have to work a lot with marketing, with operations, with IT. So a lot of times I see myself as the glue that communicates between IT and the business end and marketing to really harness those insights. So we're using this all across the company. We're looking at forecast accuracy, like how do we do human in the loop API, where we can blend models but queue up meteorologists at the right moment, how we can take these insights to see how weather is going to predict what consumers are going to buy, forward push those algorithms to our different business clients so that they know when to market. We can use it on our platform to advertise the right content, and we can also use that to create content and make sure that we dish up content in a way that's really meaningful and engaging, but it's giving you access to the information you need right away. So we're really taking data and analytics and utilizing it throughout our company internally, but then also with all of the businesses that we work with.
Really interesting. And so Jed, to toss it over to you. So I think a lot of people might think delivery.com and think about a single experience, very consumer-facing business. Yep. You go online, you guys should sort of own all the data and own those experiences. But in reality, you guys have a very multifaceted business, and the way that you're acquiring customers is pretty unique. So be curious how you think about the way that data plays into how you go acquire, or the types of businesses that you bring on, or the types of strategic decisions that you make for the way that you're going to power different sites.
Yeah, so our marketplace has traditionally been a two-sided marketplace. So we have 2 million customers that come to our owned and operated site and apps. And then we have roughly about 15,000 merchants that are on the platform. So those 2 million people are buying things and browsing basically the content that is provided to us or uploaded to us from those merchants. Once that is uploaded to us, what we realize is now we're sitting on obviously a lot of, whether it be in the case of restaurants, menu data, or in the case of a provider of, or a liquor merchant, it would be obviously UPC data. So it's a lot of obviously just coded information that we could ostensibly then push out to somebody else. So through partners that are basically publishers, so online publishers, Yelp, YP.com, and others, we expose that content. So it allows us to effectively get free traffic, and then we pay them a downstream revenue share for basically doing their part, right? So it's kind of a cost arbitrage game where we could go and acquire a customer using acquisition marketing dollars on a billboard or in a subway or online through pay-per-click or display ads, or we can decide instead we'll share in our revenue, but then there's no cost to acquire the customer. But once we bring those people then kind of into our environment, whether it be originating on a place like Yelp or it originating on our own platform, how do we then show what is basically merchandised information? So a bunch of different merchants or a bunch of different items. So in the case of food, to come into our experience as a first-time user, it can be quite arresting to have to go through like 500 merchants that can deliver to this address. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're not even from New York and you're just here for the night, staying at a hotel. So we have to then present the information in a way that is less arresting. So we have to either, in the case of you never having come to our site, we have to kind of look at people like you with little information that we have about you and try to perhaps expose merchants first that we think would be most relevant. But as we get to know you, your taste profile, then we can start showing you things that are probably more relevant. And because we're a high velocity business, it's almost kind of expected on the behalf of customers that we're going to show them the things that they most recently did, because people aren't often one with a lot of time. That's why they come to something like delivery.com. So they're trying to order something locally and often on demand. Most of our ordering is done for an ASAP delivery. And so we want to present the stuff that is easiest to get them to check out. In the case of liquor, I don't want to experience that data in the same way I would a restaurant menu. I actually have more brand loyalty than I do if it comes from the East Side or West Side liquor store, right? So in that case, it all has to be product or brand first. And then we will then decide on the back end how best to match that to the right merchant based on the merchants that have the best reviews, that are closest to you, that carry that product in inventory. So there's a lot that goes on in the back end to not only make sure that we have what you're looking to buy, but present it to you in a way that's most relevant to your particular purchase path.
it's interesting. One of the topics that's probably supporting some of what you guys do is this concept of lookalike modeling or personas, this idea that when a customer comes in for the very first time, we don't actually know that much about the individual, but we do have this responsibility to provide some sort of relevant experience to that person. You can't just say, leave it completely open and say, do whatever you want, find whatever you want, and hopefully you actually convert. We try to make it very relevant and bring them down the funnel very quickly. So I'd be curious for either of you guys, when you're thinking about marketing and you're thinking about the one-to-one, which is the end goal, and if you have unlimited and perfect information, sure, we can get to the one-to-one marketing experience for that customer. But starting from no information on that customer, how do you apply lookalike modeling? How do you think about personas? How do you think about who he or she is when they're coming in for the very first time, and try to find that balance between providing relevant experiences to people without being creepy, but also trying to very quickly move towards that true personalized experience for the individual?
Well, one thing on one-to-one, because it was a big debate a while ago at the company, I think in the eyes and kind of experience of the consumer, he or she will feel that it's personalized to them. It doesn't mean that we have to have 5 million pieces of content for every single active customer in the file. So I think that's important because you quickly get twisted and tied up trying to execute with the complexity when you don't really need that level of detail. So I think that's important, and it's one of the tips that I have is try to keep it as simple as possible, especially getting out of the gate, and then further iterate, and yes, you'll ramp up on the number of kind of iterations, but there comes a point of law of diminishing returns, I think. And you don't need all of that granularity, and you just get really twisted and tied up. That's a learning that we had, and it was a big debate. So when I say one-to-one at my company, it's really the experience that consumer is feeling and experiencing versus the true reality of that it is so granular.
Definitely, having worked with a lot of data scientists, I can see people going down that rabbit hole and say, oh, I got this great model and it has 100 different variables. I'm like, how are you going to explain that to marketing? So you
How are you
know,
going to work?
yeah. Right.
Forget explain it, but even just maintain it and keep it refreshed and relevant. And
yeah, you always have to keep your end goal in mind. You can have the most complex model possible, but if it's not actionable, if you can't use it, then there's no point. So take what little information that you have to start. It could be something as simple as location, and use that as your basis start, and then keep developing from there.
Yeah, we love this idea as well of prescriptive recommendations. So there's so many things that you could do that if you can be prescriptive and you can try to sort and prioritize what is actually going to be relevant for the customer, that tends to break through the noise more so than anything else. Like, do I need to put the exact right product, the exact number of milliliters, the right, let's say it's Reposado versus Añejo, whatever it is, for that individual, versus just say, okay, this person very likely is looking for booze. Let's create the booze-based experience, and that's enough to, drive the purchase.
Yeah, well, you kind of stole my thunder. I was going to say location. The other one is time. So if you're placing an order at 11 o'clock at night, there's a higher likelihood that you may be buying something of a particular type of product versus another
Liquor.
time of day. Exactly, liquor maybe one and done.
Or pizza, maybe.
Exactly, or pizza. And actually, the two things come together, and I'll talk about it in a second. But location is our entire business, because what you experience on our site, app, or through our partners is specific to the address that you are located at, right? So if you're on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, you're experiencing delivery.com very different than somebody in a part of Brooklyn, let alone all the different parts of Brooklyn. So location is paramount, and I would say then the other thing obviously is time to kind of try to create these lookalike models. And based on location, we know obviously then things that are moved quickly, or I'm sorry, things that are purchased most often in those areas, which is a reflection often of quality. Meaning that if people like a certain dish from a certain place, it's a reflection perhaps of quality of that merchant, whether it be delivery time or how they prepare it, how it's presented, et cetera. And then in terms of liquor, one of the things that we most recently did is that first starting post-checkout, and then more recently or soon we're going to do a pre-checkout, is as you're going through a food experience based on the cuisine type, when you check out, we're providing you an option to append to that purchase in the same cart either wine, beer, or liquor that pairs to that. So initially we build a data model, not too complex, not 100 variables, I promise, that basically says if you're going to be choosing pizza, there's a high likelihood a certain type of beer, right, or beer would go with that. And so we'll just start there. And what was interesting is that we started with only a small set of our merchants in Manhattan with a very kind of tight delivery zone, because often merchants will put a minimum that they want you to purchase. And so if you're checking out, you don't want to have to buy 3 bottles of wine. Maybe you just want 1. And what we found is that 42% in this initial test of people that appended liquor to their food purchase, where people had never bought liquor on our site before, by simply putting it in front of them and making it some sense, make sense relative to in context to what they were buying. 42% of them were people that would have never actually clicked to the other tab and bought liquor.
It's really interesting.
Yep.
So Rosemary, turn over to you a little bit. So thinking about this idea of location-based marketing, there's a lot of companies out there that have taken this idea of weather and tried to make it true to how they deliver an experience. There's like a company like Movable Ink, for instance, that when they first started, they had weather-based email. So the email would change based on the weather outside. So you're not sending, go get your great new pair of sunglasses when it's pouring rain outside. And there's a lot of relevant other applications for that. So be curious for you guys as you think about the way that the business can create value for businesses or for consumers. What are the ways you're thinking about taking data and then applying it to real-time experiences?
Sure. So, obviously there's a good marketing and advertising application, but I think for a lot of companies, it's having that aha moment of we have so much data internally, and you try to capitalize as much as you can on that internal data. You can see past history, you have some access to demographic information, but really weather is like a huge component of that. So if you can add weather into that model, you're going to have a higher level of accuracy and granularity when you're trying to really personalize your message out there. So obviously marketing, even for financial planning and analysis, for operations, staffing levels, safety and security. We really pride ourselves on being a whole enterprise solution because there's so many aspects that weather affects, both with people and within companies.
Weather definitely directly affects our business.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, because of the physicality of it. On the consumer side, we push emails out that we're trying to obviously make those as personal as possible based on where you live and what you like. But in addition to that, if we know weather is coming, right, it's an opportunity through an automated or semi-automated way through an email service provider that actually you can push a message that pushes people to do something based on what's going on with weather patterns. It also then impacts spikes in activity on our site. If weather is bad, that means a lot of people are going to be ordering, and so the delivery time may actually be longer than expected. And so we have to accommodate for that in kind of setting the right customer promise so that our merchants are constantly changing what should be the expected delivery time. And in more and more cases, more of those deliveries are being done by third parties. So we're getting that data from Uber, and then we could tell the merchant, look, it's going to take longer than expected, so we're going to let the customer know.
And Annemarie, so I think for you guys, it's almost when you think about the TV exclusive business or the way that it used to be, it probably used to be easier because you have lots of data on customers, but you're providing out there a single brand-based experience. It's almost like the Spider-Man quote. So with more power, more responsibilities, you move to the digital world, and you actually have customers that are shopping in many, many different ways, and they're shopping from a different experience or different lens. How do you think about the way that that plays into the email or the digital marketing experience relative to just the TV experience, which might be the same for a very large
so we do personalize based on their interactions with us, and we know who, for example, in our email file, the millions of people that are opted in, we know who has only checked out by picking up the phone. We know the ones who actually pick up the phone and check out, and the ones who then go online and browse and just see what's out there and then still prefers to call in, and we know the ones that only exclusively go digitally, either on their mobile or on the desktop. So we do tailor and personalize. Sometimes we'll have messages that drive tune-in for the people that we know are very kind of TV-centric, and that works really well. And for the others, we wouldn't waste kind of a real estate message saying tune in because we know she's not going to. We'll expose like new arrivals or a promotion or a piece of content that has a tip or way to style something. So we'll deliver something different instead of kind of driving her over to the TV. So we do tap into that data.
Interesting. So we only have 2 minutes left, so I want to ask 2 more questions, and we'll just go down the line. So if you could push a button tomorrow and have perfect data on any one thing around the customer, what would you want to have information on, or what would be the experience that you'd want to be able to create based on that piece of data that you might not have today or that doesn't exist?
I think it all comes down to what people are thinking. We're very experience-driven and intent-driven, so we're constantly just trying to get in the minds of the consumer. So any information I can have on what people are thinking, obviously, yeah, it's creepy, but that's the golden ticket.
That's such a tough question. I mean, there's so many things I would want. I want more emails, just that alone, right? It's highly identity. It sounds so basic, but it's the truth. And probably, we have a deal of the day. It's a today special, and that drives a lot of our business. It creates the demand. So I'd probably want to know more about some of those items that she would want, right? Sort of freshness and newness of categories that we're not in, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of circles in the same category, but really intent, meaning that people, for the most part, are very intent-driven when they come to our experience. If we try to add a kind of a discoverable layer on top of it by recommending things, would that actually cause people to add more things to their basket? Or is our business always going to be kind of constrained in terms of the things that people want to buy because they know what they want and they just want it quickly? So how can we kind of expand the universe of things that you'll purchase without causing you to bounce out of the site? So if I could somehow tap into that kind of intent-driven buyer, but find out what I could possibly do to get them to buy a little bit more now, that would be great. So if you know a company that does that, I'd love to meet them.
And last question for you guys. So if we think about giving one recommendation to the audience here, obviously a very diverse crowd, and you guys are diverse yourselves. So if you could give everyone one piece of advice when it comes to where to start or what to do next when it comes to your data or your process or some way to begin on that journey of being more personalized, because I think there's a lot of companies out there that desperately want to appear more personalized than they are, and they know there's a million things that they could do. So what's one piece of advice you would have on starting on that journey, or wherever you are, the next thing you might want to do?
I would say collaboration. That's the most important, both within your organization, between marketing, business, tech, and then externally, know what you're good at, but then don't be afraid to rely on the experts when it comes to meeting goals for your brand.
I would say ensure you hold out a control group so you can truly prove the incrementality of your personalized campaign, and you can iterate and you can prove that and influence the organization to scale it even more and change behavior. And that's what's going to work because it's fact-based, it's not emotional.
We kind of cohort our users into three groups. We call them loyalists, tourists, and fanatics. Loyalists are people that have ordered once and never again. Tourists 2 to 6 times, and fanatics 7 times plus. And so we spend a lot of time trying to learn from our fanatics what caused them to change from being loyalist to fanatic. But most importantly, really kind of tourist on up. But getting them to buy 2 times is something we're relatively good at. Getting them to buy 7 times, once we know that they've done that, it's like on a hamster wheel. They never leave, right? So the question really for us is, can we learn as much as possible from our fanatics? Because knowing what they do and why they do what they do will help us learn how we can get quicker, right? In learning how to get the loyalists and the tourists to become one of them.
Yeah, I love it. It's start with the data, figure out what makes your best customers unique, then collaborate across teams so that you can actually get something done and you're not constantly running into roadblocks, and then measure it so that you know what works so you can make the right business case. So it's a good wrap up for this session.
Yeah, all packaged.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you guys for listening. I don't think we have to say